IDBM Challenge, Season 1, Episode 4. Do you play by the rules or do you create your own rules? Do you follow the system or imagine a new system? In today's episode, we spoke with John about what are the flaws of the current system and why do we need to find a new way to go forward. Enjoy! So, you recently released your album, right? Oh wait.
Do we know?
Wrong guy. Sorry.
It's okay. I was thinking a coworker did, but I actually also thought, like, wait, did I? Like, no, I didn't. Then I didn't do that.
It's a nice way to Hello. Welcome to yet another episode of Black Tables and Black Chairs. I'm here. I'm joined by Mr. John Owens. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
on this black table with black chairs.
So, how's your day been so far?
Long, but really good. Had a big big research download with clients all day. Of course, I can't talk about the project on the recording, but it went really well, and we got a lot of good feedback from clients for like what we're doing for next steps. That we help them get over a lot of their fears that they have with the project and concerns that they have, and really help them understand the design thinking process.
Cool. Now, before we go deeper into anything else, could you like kind of share a bit, like, what's your background? Where do you come from and what do you do?
Sure. So my background is mostly in industrial design, but also really heavily based in design strategy and design research and ethnography. I got into design maybe around the age of 16 or 17 when I was living in Japan during high school. That was a big inspiration for me because I never knew that products were designed in the way that they kind of, that's now become like a big thing now, but you know, back in like the 90s and early 2000s, like Japan was avant-garde for product design. And back then I was a kid, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but seeing these things I realized, you know, I really like these things. I want to make stuff like this. I didn't even know what product design was called or industrial design was called. And it was from then that I started learning about that there's actually a university for art. I can go to art school. I can be taught these skills. I'm taught how to make these things. And that was really the gateway. I did my undergraduate in industrial design, and then I have a double master's. It's a master's and MSc in innovation design and mechanical engineering, both from Royal College of Art and Imperial College of Engineering in London. And in between that, I've worked for a few companies doing product design, mostly Philips, Fuse Project. A long time ago I had an internship at Olympus when I was very young. I'm currently working at IDEO as an industrial designer and product designer. Let's see. That was not in chronological order at all. But mostly what I do as far as industrial design is concerned is creating products that are what are called human-centered, which is a term, you know, I'm sure you've heard. It's really big. It's coined by IDEO, but basically creating things that improve the quality of human life and are really empathetic towards their user. So going into the field and doing research that's really people-centered to find insights based around what is their actual experience, daily experience, like using this thing or in having this service or just being this person in this environment, and subjecting yourself to the same conditions that they're subjected to slowly, as you observe them, become able to empathize through the actual physical experience, and through their experiences. And from there, really starting to pump out all the insights that you gained, and then what are things that you could do based on those insights, and then from there certain design solution brainstorming, and then taking all of that again and bringing it back into the field and testing it with those users to see like how does this actually have a real tangible impact on their life. So there's a lot of repeat in the process, but you eventually create something that's really specifically for them, because there's no point in producing something if it's not going to help someone, you know, if it's just another thing in the world. And it feels like we have a lot of that now. There's a lot of like stuff for the sake of making stuff. It's just beautiful, and everything does everything. Like I have a phone that does everything, you know. It's not really specific towards like one need that I have. You know, I can check my email on it, I can make calls on it, I can send texts, I can order food. Like it's a one-stop thing. But there's a lot of things in life that really need to be specific, like a pacemaker or surgical equipment. Doesn't need, you know, you don't need to do a million things. It needs to do what it does really well, and it needs to be a very, very good experience for the person that's using it, because this thing is going to save lives. It could be the same thing with a medicine treatment kit in somewhere in rural Ethiopia or rural Uganda. Like, it doesn't need to do everything, but it has to do what it's supposed to do really well, and really well for the people it's doing it for.
Yeah.
That's what I mainly focus on.
And I don't know, it kind of, at least for me, it kind of echoes with the documentary of this, your collective. Can you tell me that, like,
Yeah, sure.
Are they linked? Like, is it linked to your work? And, you know, what is it about?
There's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of subliminal links. There's a lot of links that I didn't realize was there. And a lot of people at IDEO say that we have a thing we call side hustles, which is kind of like a lot of people at IDEO have their own side projects. And they often comment that they didn't realize that the things that they were learning at IDEO kind of bleed into what they do. Like how to do empathetic design research, you know, which also encompasses how do you sit in a room with someone and learn about them and get them to open up to you and trust you, you know. That's very important for conducting an interview for a documentary. It's very important for just getting around in a documentary. But to backtrack, so the documentary that I'm making, it's a team of me and two other people, and it's a collective called Sentient Collective, and it's basically an organization that's created to help humanity break away from our current consumption-based narrative that we live in, and to open their minds to something a lot bigger, whether it's circular economy, where it's sharing economy, which is pretty much the same thing, if not quite similar, or different forms of economy, or different forms of creating tangible economic value. We want to make the point that at the end of the day, new school economics, or current economic model that we have, it champions profit and capital profit above everything else. And everything else is considered an externality. For example, deep underground aquifers of deep underground aquifers of water, topsoil biodiversity, bees, which pollinate all the plants, almost all of the plants that we get most of our fruits from. These things are considered externalities in our current economic system, which is something that is external. It's not related to the system. Yet the irony in this is that these are the actual things which allow the system to exist in the first place. They allow us to exist in the first place. And we have to have a higher awareness and appreciation of that, along with an appreciation of other things that are not externalities but are treated as so, such as human labor, human rights, you know, not just making something cheap for the sake of making it cheap. We have to think of all of the happiness costs, the social costs that come along with the people who are being forced to, and we can say they're not forced, but they are forced to make our clothing at a cheaper price. They're not forced in the sense that no one's holding a gun to their head and saying you have to make this clothing cheaper, but they're forced in the way that the economic model forces them into that, because that's where their country's GDP is, that's where their country's economic value is, and that's the highest they can get for that, because we don't have a system that allows people to exist on an equal playing field. What we're trying to do is highlight two things. We're trying to take the environment and very large environmental issues, and then the really huge social issues that we have, and show that they come from one source, which is narrative. It's the story we tell each other, it's the story we tell ourselves about who we are and how we relate to the planet, how we relate to each other. So the documentary is an hour and a half where we interview several specialists and experts, but we also interview who we're calling extraordinary everyday individuals. And these extraordinary everyday individuals are people who have basically made huge impact in social or ecological issues simply by changing their way of life, very painlessly and very simply. So one example is a woman named Lauren Singer. She's a 25-year-old Williamsburg, Brooklyn living young professional. In the past 4 years, she's only produced enough trash to fit in this glass here. And when you hear that, your normal impression of a person is that they're a hippie that smells bad and lives in the forest and hugs trees and has made all these sacrifices and doesn't have anything modern. But she lives in a really nice place in the middle of Williamsburg. She's a normal New York dwelling young professional. She goes to work every day like all of us, but she just basically reverted back to a few things. Like, she doesn't use anything that she's going to throw away that she can't recycle or compost. And when you see the amount of effort that it takes to have that much impact, the effort is minuscule. So what we want to do is actually show, and what we do is we follow her, we shadow her, we interview her, and we showcase her to show what she does, to say you can do this too, it's actually this easy. But wait, maybe you feel like you can't do it. Here's a plan to get you on track to doing this. Or you could just do 90%. Here's your impact at 90. Just do 50. Here's 50. Or you can do 10. Here's 10%. Here's your impact at 1%. Even if it's 10%. So let's say you produce 40 mason jars, because she puts things in a mason jar, in 4 years. I produce 40 mason jars in a day, probably, of trash, if I look at how much I consume as one individual. So the documentary is really about making these very, very easy to understand, valid comparisons to empower people to realize that they can make a huge amount of change. Now you say, how does this relate to the social issues? Well, we vote not just by going to a ballot and casting a vote for a president or a mayor. We vote by what we buy. If companies can't sell shit that they make, they're not going to make it anymore. So if we choose to purchase things that keep people at the heart of their mission, that have a humane process in the production of those goods and how they're handled, how they're distributed, and how they're disposed of, then that's what will become economically viable in the system that we live in. And that's what will speak to the market. So you may say, well, I can't buy these things because they're expensive. I can't buy these things because only rich people can afford these. Most of the time, that's not true. And we're showcasing that in the individuals that we show in our documentary. Most of the times, A, that's not true, just out front. But B, it's also about your choices. You can have 3 throwaway shirts from H&M, or you can have one nice shirt that's going to last you for longer. It's where are your values? Do you need 30 pairs of shirts, or do you need 7 pairs of shirts? So that's
Wow. That's super interesting. The way it's to me it sounds like an inspirational role model. This is what these people are doing. Find your own way. So it's not it doesn't sound like
Not at all. We don't. There's too much. There's already enough of this is bad. This is bad. Look at this. This is bad. Humans are shit. We're shit. And then what? Then what? It's that's almost every documentary right now. It gets you riled up. It brings you to this new peak of what you feel is emotional awareness, and you want to do something, and then it just drops you off flat. It's use this light bulb, or write to your Congress, or here's some positive things that the government is doing. But in reality, any kind of bureaucratic system will move too slow. We put all of this weight on the UN. We put all of this weight on governments, on world leaders to be our saviors. They're gonna solve all the world's problems. In a bureaucratic system, they're not gonna move fast enough. They're not gonna move fast enough at the speed that nature moves. This awareness, this movement, this kind of culture shift needs to happen from the ground up, and it needs to happen with people having a value change and a value shift. Everything that we have right now is pumped at us buy this, get this, you need this, you're not sexy enough, your breasts aren't big enough, you're not rich enough, you don't have enough things, you're not successful enough. It's constantly just being thrown at our face. And it doesn't matter if you don't have television, it's going to be thrown at you on Facebook. It doesn't matter if you don't have a smartphone and don't use Facebook, you walk outside, it's thrown at you on billboards and advertising. It's become such a norm to consume and to not think about the consumption and what happens to it, because we're so busy. We're driving to work, we're taking care of our kids, we're walking the dog, we have all of these things that are on our plate that we feel like we can't handle everything. So the idea is that the only way that we can change this mindset is to have a culture shift and a mindset shift that values human and sentient life and happiness higher than it does profit. And that's possible. We believe it's possible, which is why we're making this film. But it's a matter of how you motivate and incentivize people. And right now, everything is about blame and about, these are the facts, look how horrible it is. People aren't going to respond to that. People need to be forgiven, and then they need to realize and they need to be shown that you've got all these other amazing things that you can do. There's actually this whole other world waiting, and it's wonderful. You know, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That like you don't really, if you think about it like from a change perspective, no one really changes if they start like if you're being bombarded by these claims that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Just gonna make us feel bad. I think like there's lots of like this when you think about the system as it is now. There's a lot of like because we are being bombarded by all this kind of visual and different stimuli all the time. We are super weak. Like mind is like we are so confused all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of just kind of feels that we are so weak. And when we're being kind of shown all the messages, then we just just go ahead, go with the flow. So how did you find all these people that like this?
It's, you know, I used to not realize this, but I've really realized this in the past 2 years. Whatever you want to do, if you just start reaching for it and asking for it, the universe is going to give it to you. You know, when I started this documentary, I borrowed a really, really shitty like point and shoot camera from a friend. And I bought I think it was a $20 tripod, and I went around New York. I went around to the zoo, like to other places, try to make it look like I was filming in different places. I sat down in front of the camera and filmed myself, and I did a crowdfunding, you know, and I raised about $3,000, you know, just sending it out to friends, family. But someone saw that crowdfunding campaign that then contacted me, and they said, you know, I saw what you're doing. No one's going to give you money for this. You've never made a film. You don't have any credentials. You don't have any trust or reliability in the industry, and you're asking for a lot of money for that. And this person is someone I went to university with. And they said, but I know you, and I know if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And I'm actually a member of this. It was a startup at the time, but it was a startup incubator that helps companies that are trying to do new things around food sustainability. He said I'm co-founder of this company that's a startup that helps other companies that want to make huge impacts socially and sustainably in the food industry. And he said, I liked your message around food. I liked your message around like inclusiveness around agriculture. And, you know, maybe there's a way that I can help. And he said, let's keep talking. So, you know, we talked for about half a year. And over that half a year, the project developed based on like what him and I talked about. I became friends with someone who had also made a documentary, and then getting loads of advice from them. And the interesting thing was the friend that I became with, the person I became friends with that made a documentary, it was their documentary that I saw that inspired me to make a documentary. So this is how the universe works. I didn't know this person at all. And then somehow through a chain of events, I ended up meeting their wife randomly when I was in the office of Abe Rogers, having tea with Abe Rogers, the architect. He left to get more tea for us. There was a woman sitting in the office. I started talking with her because he mentioned that her husband had made a documentary. And I said, oh, you know, what's your husband's documentary about? And she told me what it was about. And I said, wait, is your husband this person? And she said, yeah, that's my husband. And next thing you knew, I get a phone call from her husband. And we started to meet and talk about the project, and we became friends. And then as the project developed, who's now Lawrence Wu, who's now the executive producer of my film, basically came into a good flow with his investments and was able to transfer a large amount of money to start the project. So, you know, things over time started to develop, and it was only because I wanted it and I went for it. And things just started falling into place. Like, you know, I didn't have anything, and then suddenly we were able to buy a red camera, buy the tripod, we bought lenses, we bought lights, we bought you know, almost everything we needed, and started having an interview. And I started getting the subjects that I needed by looking at TED Talks, looking at other documentaries, and I literally just emailed them, said, this is what I'm doing, this is the documentary treatment, so this is what the film is about, you know, here's who we're thinking about talking to, and here's why we want to talk to you. And you'd be surprised how open people are when they believe in your mission and they believe what you're doing and they want to help.
Yeah.
And so I would talk to someone, I'd go and I would fly to them, I'd hire a sound person on the spot, and we'd conduct the interview. And afterwards, almost every time these people, because these are people that are well connected, they say, you know, you should talk to this person and this person and this person. And then they make an introduction to you. And then you meet this person and this person, and that person makes an introduction to you, to someone else. And, you know, it kind of just started to flow naturally.
actually. Like that's something that you know, for some weird reason I've been hearing quite often. When you have a clearly communicated vision, or like, you know, what's your take on how do you want to make the world a better place?
Yeah.
Then you know, then it's something easy, like you know, for people can grasp and get hold, you know, kind of join or contribute. And the same thing, like you know, there was this how do you call it, startup movement called Slush. They're also in Tokyo, and I interviewed one of them. So it's all like student volunteer based. And he was also saying like this young kid that, I mean, he said also that they got in touch with these high-ranking people, companies, and they were also like super open about these things. But the same thing, like you know, they also communicated. This is how we see the future of Japan. They're so beautiful.
No. I like where you're going with that.
No, it's just like it seems to be that you know, like this is like one of those age of ideas. And, you know, if you're able to tell a story, that, you know, it's like I don't know, meanings meanings are like super important. And as you pointed out, like, it's not so much about like you know, producing things as much as well for most people still. But
it's exactly. You know, it's like, what's the purpose behind what you're doing? That's the most important. And then second or equally important to that is understanding what your vision and what your mission is. Like, what are you trying to do? Because you have to be able to communicate that immediately. What's your vision and your mission? And then why are you doing it? What's the purpose behind it? And if you can communicate those two things well, then people who you're talking to, if they're on the same frequency as you, or if they're interested in helping that cause, will immediately be on board. You know, there were people that weren't on board, or there were people that wanted money, or just wanted, like, there's certain bigger names who I won't mention that we reached out to that didn't want to talk to us because we couldn't further their career. There are people like this in every industry, and you'd be surprised if I told you who they were. But the majority of people just want to help. They will, you know, we interviewed Dr. Vandana Shiva, who's like a super famous environmental activist, feminist, scientist, and she's extremely busy, and she made time for us. We had to change the date randomly, and she made time for us before she went to see her family, you know, and she squeezed it right until like she had to go to the airport. We were still cleaning up in her house, and she had already left to the airport. So, you know, people want to help, and they want to help in any way possible. And for her to give us, you know, an hour of her time is a big deal. You know, like but she did. And so it's one thing that I've learned is to never not ask. Like, there's never going to be a time ever where I'm going to think, what if, with the work I do. I will take every risk necessary that's not irrational. And by risk, I mean risking embarrassment, risking being told no. You know, like there's, you just keep going. Every no is just getting you closer to a yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a it's a weird fear, like this fear of rejection. But that happens also like in private life. Like outside work. Like this, what if they say no? It's really silly. Really.
They could say no, but they can also say yes, and you could spend your whole life worrying about no. You know, everyone gets into that trap. Like, what if I submit these drawings and they're not good, and I get embarrassed, or I get told that this isn't good enough? So some people don't practice drawing, and then in effect they're really bad at drawing, and then that spirals into, you know, this, how do you say in English, like this just as it compiles on itself, and it gets worse and worse, you know. With any skill, with any ability, with public speaking, with talking to a girl or a boy that you're interested in, like it's, you know, it's always going to be that. And at the end of the day, you know, you're not gonna, you know, when you're dead or when you're dying, you're not gonna say, I'm really glad I didn't take that risk. You know, I don't want to, when my life is over, if I'm looking back, to say I could have done more. If I feel like I did my best, even if I failed, because there's no real thing as failure. But even if I didn't succeed in that moment, you know, if I did the best I could do, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what I've got to do every time.
Would you say that part of people's fear of like not doing things, like fear, like being afraid of rejection, is that might set them into a new course, and then everything becomes uncertain?
What I think of that?
Yeah, but it like
I think it's human nature. I think our brains are, I mean, we have so many fail-safes built in to protect ourselves. It's like suicide is frightening for a reason. If it wasn't, then, you know, everyone probably would do it, because everyone's, like, let's be honest, everyone's been at a point where their life has been really hard. Everyone's gone through stuff. But, you know, there's many reasons not to, but there's also the fact that we have a fail-safe built in, that it's the most terrifying thing we can think of. It's like why people don't go and do dangerous things, because that fail-safe's built in so we don't hurt ourselves. Psychological fail-safes are the same thing. Your brain is trying to protect you from the pain of feeling that you're not good at something. Like, let's take drawing again for an example. Let's say you're not good at drawing. You have to practice. Drawing's not something like code, for example, where it's about memory. The more I learn and the more I memorize the code, the better I can get, and I can see this progression. Drawing is a physical skill as much as it is a mental skill. You have to develop muscle memory, you have to develop a style, and that takes time. There's a lot of failure that happens on your way to success, and that path can be very brutal. And what your brain will try to do is, in order to stop you from having that moment of, I really suck, I'm not good at this, because that's painful, that hurts, it tries to protect you, and it stops you. It usually stops people through the means of procrastination or through distraction. And this is an actual, like, physiological mechanism that happens in your brain. There's certain strategies that people use, which is to count backwards from 5, and at 1 make a decision no matter what, to just snap out of it and just do it. But we've grown into this really comfortable life that we live like right now. You know, there's no animals chasing and eating us. There's no, you know, there's no real danger. But because we have the ability, as we think and we say, more than other animals, which is, personally, I don't think it's true. I think maybe specific animals, but we do know that we, in our own world of knowledge, are able to see the future, visualize the future, not see it, but imagine it, and then regret and look back on the past. We never live in the present, and we're always living in this chronic fear of something happening. Because we have this amazing ability of imagination, we can see the worst case scenario, and that fear is what stops us, I think, normally. You know, like, for example, like, let's say things aren't going well at work, and you get a phone call, and it's like 8 p.m., you're at home, and you look and you see it's your boss. And the way the human mind works is, shit, it's my boss, they're calling, what if they're calling for something bad? Oh, I didn't do that thing I was supposed to do. Oh my God, I'm in trouble, I'm gonna get fired, shit, I'm gonna be homeless on the street because I don't have a job, I'm gonna die because I'm homeless. So in a split second, you go from, my boss is calling, or this person is calling, to I'm gonna die. You know, that's something that only the human mind can do, right? So this nature, this part of our nature that we have that was originally designed to protect us, has become like our biggest hindrance, you know, that we face. It's all ourselves. And I'm saying this, and it sounds like I'm saying I'm immune to these, like, I'm saying this from experience, you know, having gone through these things. It's easy to, when things are all going great, everything's going well, to imagine your future going great, to imagine success, to imagine things going well. When things aren't going well, that's when it's the hardest to imagine success, to imagine things going well. Because the only thing worse and scarier to the human mind than basically losing everything that you have is going lower than that situation. You know, so we try to protect ourselves. Or I should say, the only scary thing, I'll re-say it, and maybe you can edit this out, but the only thing scarier to humans than not ever ascending, not ever getting more, is losing what you have.
Yeah.
That's the best way to say it.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you think about the trajectory where we are right now, if you're trying to, like, of course you can also argue that, you know, events taking place on a global scale are just like random, nothing is. But I mean, when you look at the global narrative now, how we shifted from, like, when kind of this mass production started, then people started having like these crazy hopes in the future, and somehow we turned into like this. Kind of now we are fearing the worst. So I don't know. It's really like interesting times we're living right now.
Yeah, there's a huge difference in expectation between people now and people before, like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
You know, everything for us is instant. You know, we're on our phones, and if something doesn't download immediately, we're like getting fidgety and like, oh, fuck this phone, I hate this phone, this stupid. You know, it's you know, like that reminds me. Actually, I was listening to a comedian. I think it was Louis C.K. And he was talking about this very same thing. You know, we become so accustomed to feeling so self-entitled, like everything revolves around us. And he's like, you know, it's going to fucking space. Can you just give it a minute? The message is going to space and coming down. Can you wait like 5 seconds? And it's really true. Like our expectations are so extreme for things that we don't understand, you know? And you always, you know, oh, this phone sucks, iPhone suck. And, you know, it's like, no, the phone doesn't suck. Your life around the phone sucks. Like, your perception sucks. And that's the state we're living in. And, you know, but that really, like, feeds into the bigger problems we have that go back to what Sentient Collective is about. Like, I think we will get to the point where we have to realize, you know, we can't have these things instantly anymore. We can't have everything instantly. We are going to have to wait a little bit for this, just a little bit. You know, we are going to have just a little bit less of this. And it's not because there are too many people on the planet. It's not because there aren't enough resources. It's because we are not managing the resources that are available to us on the planet properly, especially in accordance to the amount of people that we have. You know, most of the world is covered in water, you know, and then the habitable for humans world, a lot of it it's really densely packed into cities. You know, there's a lot of open space. You know, the idea that there's not enough space for everyone is a myth. There is. The idea that there's not enough food for everyone is a myth. But we're going to have to realize that we cannot continue to grow at the rate that we're growing at economically, and we cannot have the things that we've grown to expect as like standard, which are really luxuries. And understanding that and being okay with that, you know, that's that shift that has to happen. I'm not saying like we're gonna have rations and we can only have one child and we're gonna revert to some like nightmare stereotypical like red midnight version of communism. No, it's just like, you know, I don't need to have 18 alcoholic drinks when I go out with my friends. I don't need to have 40 different pairs of clothes. I don't need to have the latest this or that all the time.
But that's how it's sold. Like, like either you have like this, like it's so silly when you think about companies talking about sustainable profits. Like that's by default. Like, this is by default. It's like a zero-sum coin. Someone gains, like someone else loses.
Everyone loses in the end. Everyone's gonna lose with this game.
And then like it's so weird how this like the alternative for this basically seems to be like what you just described. Then we start rationing how many kids we have. It's not that like kind of black and white.
Well, that's the alternative that's sold to us because that's the alternative that's easiest to get people to reject it. No, you know, people say, oh, corporations are in charge, or corporations, there's a conspiracy, and you know, that's majority probably bullshit, you know. But companies are smart. Companies, the point of a company and the point of a corporation is to ensure that it's profitable and to ensure that it remains profitable. That is the only thing that entity is concerned with. So just like anything that is a living thing, you know, humans are living beings, but we're also living beings composed of billions and billions of other microorganisms, trillions of cells. We're actually a living community. We don't realize this, you know. Like in my eye, there are more living species than there are, you know, on the planet. There's so many. The same thing in a corporation. It's a collective of different living organisms, which are human beings that act, you know, simultaneously to make this flow. So this living organism known as a corporation has to ensure that it stays alive. That's the nature of everything on the planet. And if that means that it has to crush everything else in order to ensure that it keeps getting profit, that's what it's going to do. And let's backtrack because what was your original statement? I was going in a direction with this, but I think that's not the direction that I wanted.
I like this direction.
It's something that's going to relate that to. What was I saying before? Sorry. It's been a long day. But what was the original thing you asked? Because then that'll remind me what I started talking about. Oh no! Okay. So yeah, we talked about corporation. Oh yeah, so companies and profit, sustainable profit. What do we say? Going backwards.
There's like this whole thing is like really black and white. If we don't have kind of sustainable profit, like if the economy doesn't grow like it's like certain percentage per year, then we are gonna go like back into the dark ages.
All right, so there's that myth, and so everything that's pitched to us is pitched to us, you know, in like it's very subtle. If you watch movies, which are the biggest form of propaganda we have, you know, in our modern culture, movies shape the way you think, or you think you're supposed to think. You know, they shape it through, when you watch a film, if you watch the same film without music, you'll feel totally different. Because in music, you've been conditioned to, all right, this is how I'm being cued to emotionally feel in this moment, and that combined with the image fully informs my emotions, and now I'm having this emotional reaction.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing when you place strategically products into a film. So product placement's been going on forever. You see people in rap videos and films, you know, the can of Pepsi is placed specifically so the camera can see it. Their watch is displayed in a way when they put their hand here that you can see it. All of these subliminal messages are pushed to us on purpose, but even further than that, there are specific characters that are portrayed. There's always the person who thinks that there's a governmental conspiracy is always someone who's like insane. They're always some quack, you know. The person who thinks that extraterrestrial life exists outside in the universe is some crazy person who does drugs. You know, they always are presenting people as these extremes because that's how you get conditioned to believing this is how the world is. So, and when I say they, I'm not talking about them, some conspiratorial Illuminati in the sky. I'm talking about corporations, companies, people with invested interest in keeping their institution alive that have direct interest in these movies because they fund them, you know, or they have their products placed in them. Yeah. It's all a strategical move. And so when you grow up and your only version that you know of someone who only produces 4 mason jars of trash in 4 years is what I explained earlier, someone who smells bad, doesn't shave their armpits, and lives, you know, in the forest hugging trees, then that's what you're going to associate as that's the only alternative. Yeah. You know, you're not going to make the connection between, wait, I can actually living in Tokyo, like having a modern 9-to-5 job, you know, I can still go out with my friends, enjoy all the comforts of life, and not produce any trash. You don't have any. There's no context for you to even imagine that kind of association existing between those two things. You know, so the propaganda has to be reversed, for one, but also like people need to have the change in which they understand that these associations can exist, that these two things can be connected. Yeah. But it's like this, in order for like this, I think people don't realize how much stuff, how much energy, how much effort and money it takes for this whole thing that we're experiencing now to survive, to keep going, like to keep maintaining this completely unsustainable, profit-based, just consumption-based model. It takes so much effort. And the proof of that is, let's say tomorrow, right? Every single woman on the planet, when they woke up, they realized they were happy with their body. You know how many companies will go out of business overnight? Just that one, just if just every woman on the planet was like, shit, I'm fine. I love myself. I'm happy like this. There would be total like economic failure, because everything that we have right now is based on making you feel inadequate in some way, right? So there's a tremendous amount of energy that's put into that, and the companies, the people, the individuals, the whatever entity you want to say it is, that's putting that much effort into keeping things the same way, that's a big force that you have to fight. You know, they're not going to turn around because what they're doing is working and say, you know what, nah, we're just going to let our business go. You know, we're just gonna let it go, or we're not gonna sell this anymore. They have to be forced, very brutally and almost like economically violently so, forced to change. And the only way to do that is a grassroots revolution, starting with people, where people literally realize, I don't really need anything. I'm really happy. I'm happy with the things that are actually intangible, and the things that are tangible too, that bring me like completely unquantifiable joy. This food that I'm eating that brings me sustenance, I'm happy with that. I can see my family every day in the morning, I'm happy with that. I don't need constantly for things to change all the time.
Like the whole act, like I think like Tokyo is a really nice example. Like here you can really get easily get the bodily feeling how it feels, to buy things and realize that you don't buy enough things, and then you feel bad because you buy things. It's really crazy.
Yeah. Think of how much shit there is. It's just shit. It has no purpose. Like there's stores filled with bobblehead toys, like just bobbleheads. Like that's what they sell, bobbleheads. Or NYC, I love NYC keychains, or these shitty plastic like sculptures of the Statue of Liberty or the Eiffel Tower, or Tokyo Tower, or like fake katanas, like really poorly made kimonos. This is the problem that we have with our current capitalist model, is that, again, I keep coming back to this, but it's only based on profit. It validates making something to the shittiest, cheapest, most unsafe, toxic standard possible if it makes money. Like, what if we said, everything we do, everything we make, we're going to do it the best we possibly can. It's going to be the finest qualities. It's going to be made with the finest craftsmanship. It's going to have the most consideration possible to how it affects the planet and other people. And that's where our pride is. That's what our motivation is. We made the best thing. That's our pride. What happens when you get out of a model, and this is not, and I'm not saying like everything about a model is bad, but I'm pointing out the flaws because we're trying to improve things. When you have when you go from a model which also has its flaws, early models in early human civilization, for example, like post-cultural revolution, pre-agricultural revolution, when you have models that are based on I did this thing because this created the value in my community, this created the value for me. I'm a builder, I made this house, I made the best house, I have these bragging rights, that gives me pride. That's my value, that's my reward, that's what I'm going to take from it, so I'm going to do the best I can every time. Once you shift from that to now your incentive is money, this is what you're going to get from it, and all jobs now give you money. People who don't have a passion in their life already, which is not everyone, people have to find out what they like. Once the deciding factor becomes profit, then you open up this whole new avenue where people start to do things only for profit. So if someone's effort is now quantified by how much they're going to get paid, once you start paying shit money, or dollars or pounds or whatever, paper for labor, you're going to get shit labor because people aren't motivated anymore by trying to make the best thing they can because that's where their pride is. They're motivated by something that's like completely quantifiable. And we see this all the time. There's now labor that's done really poorly. There's different grades of everything that we have on this planet. It's all different grades based on how much it costs. That needs to go away because there's really no space and there's no leeway in our current finite materials and resources to continue making bullshit. To continue making crap that someone uses once and throws away, or that is sold simply because it can be sold to the cheapest price to the poorest people, and considering them a market. Humans aren't markets. People aren't markets. They're people. They're living beings, and we need to start looking at them in that way. And everyone on the same playing field, and everyone deserving the same things. Same rights. Now, there's certain things that could be incentivized, like super luxurious items should probably be even more expensive because we don't need them that often. But then where does this money go? Where does this cash go? Is it going to go into the pockets of someone who is just going to hoard that cash and not use it? Or is it going to go to building infrastructure? Is it going to go to helping to make sure that we secure the planet as it needs to be, instead of destroying it? Is it going to go to advancing this or advancing that? We need to get out of a profit mindset and get into a progress mindset. We're not in progress. So I've been babbling too long, so I'm gonna cut that here because I'm just going on and on. But
no, but this is super good stuff. I fully agree. Like when you think about it in terms of progress is really nice thing because right now it feels like we are looking at we're trying to maximize things. The more you have some successful one, like let's say, the more money you have, the products you have, the more matches you have on the team. But it's all about
more. It's more all the time. We're always afraid we're missing something. We've become so conditioned to think that we are missing out on something. We can't make a decision. I mean, like you mentioned Tinder, it's just like, it used to, like, you know, I think about, like, my ex-girlfriend's grandparents, actually. You know, they were born right after the war, like, lived in England their whole lives, lived in the same house, married very young, and they were always content. Her grandfather was always like just crazy about her grandmother. You know, like he was happy with the house they lived. It was very simple, like small little house, but he had built it himself with his own hands. He expanded it with his own hands. The garden they built with their own hands. You know, it was theirs. The relationship, it was theirs. You know, they were in the same town. Like there weren't a lot of people. There wasn't this constant like bombardment of sexuality pushed on you, of images of women, of men, of like, you know, because there's always going to be someone sexier that's going to look better, there's going to be someone funnier all the time, there's going to be someone that's smarter than whoever you're with, you know, there may be someone who's all those things at once. There's billions of people on this planet, but we forget that the important thing is the value that's there. Like, what is the experiences that you've accumulated with this person, the history you've accumulated with this person? How do they call your name? How do they listen to you? You know, what things have you gone through together? We forget all of this because before we can even get to that point, we're like, oh, but what if, but what about this person? What about this person? You know, you open your phone and you have like an infinite amount of people that you can just move through, and you can meet like 7 or 8 people in like a week. You know, you forget all about what you're looking for. You know, and it's like people are products. You know, someone said this to me at work, and it was terrifying. You know, I was using Tinder when I first came to Japan, and I was really upset with how the process worked. Like, you would match with people, and then you'd start a conversation, and then you'd agree to meet, and then they'd just never show up. And then you'd be like, hey, you know, are you coming? And then you'd realize, like, maybe a few hours later, they deleted the match. You know, and it's just like, this is like, you know, when I was a kid, and this makes me feel I'm old, but especially when my parents were growing up, but when I was a kid, if you were to meet someone, you know, you would talk to them on your house phone, you would plan to meet them, and then when that time came, you would be there. You know, you'd be there waiting, you'd be early. And if you weren't there, you know, they may wait for a while, but then they'd really start to worry. Oh, what if they got hit by a car? What if they, you know, they eventually might worry that you were dead. Because you showed people that respect of simply respecting their time. You said you would do something and you do it. You know, now it's like, because we can communicate with each other all the time, that doesn't happen. And people, we're now in this generation where ghosting is a word. Ghosting wasn't a word 5 years ago. It's a word because it's a phenomenon that's happening more and more, because we're becoming more and more disconnected from each other, and we don't look at each other as people anymore. You know, Tinder dates, how they work in Japan, how they work in New York. You meet someone for coffee for 15 minutes because, and this is a quote, they may not be worth your investing your time for more than 15 minutes. You are looking at another human being as an investment. It's insane, you know. So going back, the thing that I was told that terrified me was one of my coworkers, when I told her what happened, she said, just deal with it. It's not personal. You know, when I look through, you know, I match with people all the time, but unless I meet them, they're just data. They're not people. They're just data. You know, so we're in this throwaway culture. It's not just physical objects like clothing or products. It's people too. People are just as easily easily dispensable, I should say, as anything else. So, you know, going back to the whole relationship thing, like I talked to her, I mean, unfortunately both her grandmother and grandfather have passed away, but when they were alive, I would talk to them, and I asked him, like, did you ever think about moving? Like, you've lived here your whole life? And he said, why would I ever move? I have a house. Like, it was just, he just didn't understand, you know, and he was happy with it. He never thought about being with anyone else. You know, they've been married 60 years, 70 years, over 70 years. Never crossed his mind. You know, they were happy, like, until the end of their lives. And because he never thought, like, oh, what if there's someone else better? he was focused on that present moment, which is, I'm with Mary. That's the grandma's. I'm with Mary. That's all he thought. You know, like, why wouldn't I be happy? I'm with Mary. You know, if I wasn't with Mary, then there's a problem. But you know, we always do that. I mean, it's to an extent human nature because it helps us evolve. It helped us get, you know, if we did evolve in the way that we're being told we evolved, it was definitely a very helpful tool to evolve, because in order to keep progressing, you can't constantly be satisfied with where you are in life, right? You know, you want to have better tools, you want to have more knowledge, you want to do new things. But there's an extent to that that's progressive, and then it gets past to the point where it becomes just very impersonal, you know. It becomes very isolating.
And you can already see that now.
Yeah.
For these younger generations, and even like, you know, like we are spending more and more time with our, like, dealing with technology instead of like actual people.
Yeah.
And then like when you look at like shops, like, it seems to be about discovering, like, discover new things, discover like constantly, discover new things.
Yeah.
But you should be like kind of discovering things about your partner, for example, like focus on one thing instead. Questioning, like, do I really need all this?
No one's a master of anything anymore. We're just like kind of jacks of all trades, but there's no depth. And the more I talk to people, especially younger people, and the more dates I go on, the more people I meet, there's not a lot, and this is not everyone, but there's not a lot of depth in something. You know, like, I think people forget, and especially people who, I'm assuming this is going to be shown to art school students, you know, art school students forget that they chose to go into an institution specifically for something. So if you want to be an industrial designer, an architect, if you want to be a painter, you already specifically know what you want to do, and then you're on top of that, you're making a conscious choice to get an education around that. The majority of people go to college, university, because they have to, or they feel they have to, there's a social pressure to, and they're trying to find what they want to do. And because usually they haven't had a unique opportunity, and artists and designers are lucky, it's partially like your personality, but it's also partially luck, because they haven't had the opportunity, whether it's luck or just a natural intuition, to really figure out what they're passionate about, what they really want to do with their lives. Their deciding factors tend to be around things that are more material, like, this job's going to give me access to these resources, it's going to give me money, it's going to allow me to have this amount of time. It's never, I love doing this work, I love doing this thing, and this job is going to allow me to do that and make a living off of doing that. So most people don't have the same level of depth in something, passion, you know, desire in something that they're doing as a profession, you know, than a lot of people. And what that leads to is, when someone doesn't have something to hold on to like that, they're kind of aimless. It's why people watch a lot of TV when they get home. They play video games for hours when they get home. And yeah, watching TV is great, playing video games is great, and you could be passionate about those two things, but unless that's what you're passionate about and what you're doing, you know, and watching TV isn't an activity, it's a time passer, you know. Unless what you're doing isn't like that passion, that, you know, isn't part of that passion that you're living in your daily life, you're not really gonna have the same kind of conversation with someone that someone who is an artist, or who is a doctor, which is another form of art, or who is, you know, even a lawyer, or someone who knew what they wanted to do and go to school and went to school and made a decision consciously to do that, is going to have. Now, where am I going with this? I had a point.
If I may.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all kind of, I mean, digging deep into something that, you know, really makes you want to wake up in the morning. Yeah. Instead of just like, you know, doing things because we are being told to, or because everyone else is doing it.
Or because you feel you have to, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to do shit. I could quit IDEO right now. The only reason I'm at IDEO is because I want to be there.
Yeah.
That's it's period.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I can make more money working somewhere else for sure than at IDEO, you know, or I can make just as much money doing something else.
Yeah.
I want to be there because it's the environment that allows me to make the decisions that I want to make and to have control of my life in the way I want to make a huge positive impact in other people's lives. You know, and it allows me to be around people and spend most of my day with people that care about those same values. You know, that sense of community, like that's in that sense of the purpose is more important to me than the money. But I'm lucky enough to have that moment that changed my life, that I realized what I was passionate about and what I want to do. Now imagine not having a moment where, imagine like, so to all the artists watching this right now, you know, imagine that you never had that moment where you realize, I want to be a painter, I want to be an architect, industrial designer, I want to be a UI UX designer. You know, what would you be doing then? When you think about it, it's terrifying because you wouldn't know what you want. What would then be the driving force? Well, you got to eat, you got to have a place to stay, you need money. You know, you want to have someone else in your life, you need to have some kind of stability, you know, and that's kind of like as far as it goes. It's as far as it goes. So, you know, if you have someone where that's as far as it goes, where they're not accustomed to thinking deeply about things or to really sitting with problems and thinking about them, you know, how are you going to pitch like, you should take these actions or do these things because they're better for the planet? You know, you should take these actions and do these things because they're better for you and other people. Like, information delivery is really important in that sense.
I think you raised a really crucial point as well, you know, being kind of surrounding yourself with people who also feel the same way. That like, passion is really contagious. And that's, you know, once you get into that mode where everyone is kind of feeding off, like kind of, how do you say it, kind of, like if we were working like and I were feeding into my passion and vice versa, it's like nothing stopping you. It's like a huge force.
It's important to surround yourself with people that, it's important to surround yourself with people that see that and value that and are going to positively feed off of and give energy back to that. You know, that's probably like, team is like one of the most important things, you know, because you're not going to have all the skills you need. There are going to be people that are way better at stuff than you know, and you're going to have to be able to find those people and show them the value that you have and like have them want to work with you, and then you start feeding off of each other. You know, that's so important because, you know, nobody's an island. You can't do it all by yourself. A lot of times humans think that they are, you know, but nah. And you know, that's the message that's pushed to us. You're the individual. It's about you. It's about empowering you. It's like, no, hell no. It's not about like, if I just take any factor in my life and turn it cynical. Like, let's say I had a shitty drug addict mother, you know, I wouldn't be where I am now. Let's say I had a boss that was a rapist, you know, I wouldn't be where I am now, you know, probably like because I would have, maybe I would have had that horrible trauma of being, you know, attacked by them, or, you know what, like there's so many points in your life where shit could have just gone really wrong, you know, and that would have changed the trajectory of your life forever. So, you know, we're sold the image that we're an individual and it's about us, but it's not. Like, everything that every other person does on this planet affects every other person, you know, and you know, I'm trying to reverse that that mindset, and the people I work with are trying to reverse that mindset with the film that we're making. But there's a big hurdle there because there's a bigger, stronger, powerful message which is constantly pumped into us to the point where it's culture that we're individuals. You know, even in a country like Japan, which is very group-oriented, it's still, if you look at any commercial, if you look at any product, the way it's sold, it's about the individual. It's about, especially towards men.
It's even like, it's so crazy, like some of these ads. I would say also like for women it's like super tough. Like you have this disco. If you're like about 25, then it's like game over. Sorry. Like,
you're too old. It's done. Your life's over. No one's gonna marry you.
Let's wrap it up with something more nice.
Yeah, sure.
Christmas cake.
Yeah, that was a bit cynical.
No, it's so beautiful. Like when I don't know how much we can talk about it, but when you showed, like when you sent me the trailer, the teaser. Which one was it? Teaser, trailer?
It's a first look teaser. It's there's only 20% of filming is done, maybe even less. It was hard to put that together because there just isn't a lot, it's hard to tie a message together with just that few interviews.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that could even exist. It's a good sign.
Yeah, it is so beautiful. Like when I was watching it, like I almost cried. It's like
Thank you.
the way it's. I don't know. It just felt like it's emotionally really strong.
That's good. That's really good to hear.
So please
Do the. I'm gonna do it. It's gonna get done.
But like maybe like on a final note,
Yeah.
like we've been talking about kind of like these deep experiences, kind of meaningful life. And that. How much do you actually pay attention to like because when you think about kind of when you start focusing on like deep meanings, deep experiences, and like couples staying together for the rest of their lives and all these huge things, how much have you changed during this process? Like, have you been thinking about that?
Well, one thing I really believe is that you have to practice what you preach. So, for example, we're trying to get people to go zero waste. That's one big thing. We're also trying to get people to grow their own food, even if they're growing indoors, even if it's just a small amount of food, and to start producing their own foods that they make for themselves, and also composting. We're also trying to get people to buy less and to buy more of things that are really have their model based around sustaining life, all sentient life. So of course I can't make a documentary about this stuff and not do it. And the bigger challenge, I remember, I brought up the person I was previously in a relationship. When we were living together in New York, we started doing these things, and she made a comment. She's like, this could be a documentary in itself, because the challenges are real. You get into this whole area where you're like, shit, I don't know how to do any of this, And the thing that's been really powerful about that is it's really inspirational to realize that this is what other people are going to go through if you tell them that they should do this. So you start to immediately develop empathy for the process, which helps you make the film better. It helps you realize, which we have, and now we have an external consultant, well, more like let's say consultant, but advisor that we talk with once a month, that's really about community creation and helps companies understand what their mission is more and how to communicate that in tangible kind of assets to people. We realize that this is not just a film. The film is just almost like a 2 hour and a half kind of, not commercial, but an hour and a half introduction. What this really is, and we didn't realize, all three of us didn't realize this until we said it. What we're building right now is a culture, is a revolution. And people are going to watch this film and they're just going to be like, okay, whoa, this is possible. But oh my God, there's just so much information. What do I do? Okay, I saw the breakdowns. I saw the After Effects mathematical statistics on the screens. I know logically, but how do I even start? What things do I look for? And there's gonna be a bunch of people thinking this at the same time. We realize that there needs to be a place that people can go to feel that they're not alone, to feel that there's other people that are part of this community, either globally or near them that they didn't even know. There's workshops they can go to, there's meetups that they can go to, there's always a support. And the website will have to become a really crucial part of how this is orchestrated. So we're now actually having conversations about how do we change basically everything that the person's going to interface with after they watch this film to make it as supportive as possible for them to make a transition into a more sustainable, ethical lifestyle. So doing the things myself and having a real honest, brutal conversation with myself, certain things were easy, don't use paper towels, done, use rags and wash them, but then don't use things that you can't recycle. So you have to change the way that you buy food. I have to start taking bags with me to the grocery store. I have to start buying only the things, I can't buy the oatmeal in the box. I have to buy it in bulk. I have to take my jar with me, pour it in there, and then I have to make sure I tear the jar first, get the weight, pour the food in, and then weigh that and take it to the register. Now, there are pluses and minuses to this, right? If I'm going around with reusable jars when I go grocery shopping, I have to take something with me when I go there. It's hard to go grocery shopping on the fly, but the benefits once you get into this routine are you start being shocked at yourself, like, shit, I haven't thrown the garbage out in like 2 weeks. You know, I'm actually worried because now the little bit of garbage that's in there is rotting, so I have to throw it out. I have to get smaller garbage bags. You know, you start buying less and you're like, I have less washing to do. I also just care less. You just stop caring. I'll give you an example. I am on a 1 year stint of 1 year, what's the word, like break from alcohol. And I just don't care anymore about drinking alcohol. You know, in the beginning I did, especially like I moved back to Japan last year, and I've gone through the whole summer working in Japan, seeing friends that I haven't seen in a long time, not drinking. That's a hard thing to do, you know, but slowly it's just like you realize that you don't need what you think you need, you know. And there's, you know, going back, there's other things, and there's things that I haven't implemented yet. So, you know, I don't use paper towels. I don't buy things to clean my house, to store in my house that I can't reuse permanently, or, you know, that I can't recycle, you know. I don't buy things that have to go into the compost. It's hard in Japan because so many more things are burned that could be recycled here, as opposed to other countries. But certain things that I've had a hard time doing are finding a steady medium for using less things in plastic, even though I can recycle plastic. It's a much bigger part of the lifestyle here. But those are all excuses. You know, over time, you know, you make the effort, and the rewards will be bigger. Like you say, you know, like I have to buy, eventually I need to get a water filter because tap water here is undrinkable, especially after the nuclear incidents that have happened. You know, yeah, I can buy a water filter for maybe in US dollars, like $250, and then buy filters once a year for $50, so $200 total. But if I look at the amount of money I spend on plastic bottles of water, it's not that much different. You know, there's 365 days in a year. I go through a plastic bottle of water every 2 days, and the plastic bottle of water is about $1. You know, there you have it. So, a lot of times it's about slowing down and taking a realistic, mathematical, evaluated look at things, and realizing that you're not really the only reason you feel like you're sacrificing something is because whenever you get to a point where you have to make a change, that's the hardest part. You haven't gotten into a routine yet, but once the routine becomes normal, it's no longer a sacrifice. Then changing it again will feel like a sacrifice.
Does it feel addictive?
Yeah, because you see the results. I mean, I think the motivation for every person will be different. It can be addictive because you can see you're spending less money, you're saving more money. It's the exact same comparison as eating out every day versus cooking your own meal. You're gonna see that comparison, you know. You're gonna realize, oh shit, I'm saving a lot of money because I'm not, you know, doing this other thing that's quite wasteful. Or it could be addictive in the sense that you feel pride that you are doing the right thing. You know, that you're producing less than other people. You know, make it, if you're a competitive person, make it into a competition. Find your motivation to make it work. There's loads of different, I mean, financial motivation is real. There's a huge financial positive impact. There's obviously the impact is in it's better for the planet. That's better for you. If you have kids, that's going to be way better for your kids. You know, and it's better for your health, because you're usually using things, if they're not disposable, that are not toxic, they're not chemical. You know, you can clean your kitchen counter with bleach or some spray in a bottle that you have to throw away, or you can clean it with apple cider vinegar and lemon juice and water just as well. So, you know, like, you know, that's just one thing, you know.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, that was really long.